Hello and welcome to my channel. I am Zodiac Bandit, and today we have something very special and something I've been working on for a little while now. And that is a Grog versus Chetney versus Fjord fight, a Travis Willingham battle royale, or death battle if you will. I've been working on this for a minute. I thought it would be a fun idea to try to do and sort of go over and talk about it, because I like the idea of Campaign 1 versus Campaign 2 versus Campaign 3, Vox Machina versus Mighty Nine versus the Bell's Hells. I like that idea. Yeah, that's one of my favorite one-shots when they did Vox Machina versus the Mighty Nine. So I very much like the idea of all three of them sort of coming together and having a fight. And I want to do this with everyone's characters. And I'm sort of figuring out who to do it with, like which characters, because sometimes they have more than one character per campaign. But Travis did not. Travis did technically have Bertrand Bell, but Chetney has been his character from basically the beginning. It was always designed to be Chetney. So it's just easier to go with Chetney and not include Bertrand at all. Not to mention, this is going to be at level 10 because, as of right now, the Bell's Hells are level 10, and then we have character sheets for all of them based on Critical Role stats, and I use them for sort of researching this video and figuring everything out. So this is going to go down in a few ways. The first one is I'm going to go over their health, their AC, their speed, and then their abilities and their chance to hit each other, and then we're going to go through all of them. Once I do that, I'm going to see how many turns it would take for them to get wiped out by each other, and whoever takes the most amount of turns to get wiped out is effectively the winner. But you'll see very quickly on that that's not the only thing I'll be doing for this video. But without further ado, I want to get started, and we're starting with Grog. At level 10, Grog has 134 hit points, 19 AC, and 50 movement speed. Grog's chance to hit at level 10 is +8 with his Great Axe and +9 with his Firebrand Warhammer. To hit 40 is a 55% chance with the Great Axe and a 60% chance with the Warhammer. To hit Chetney, it's 50% chance with the Great Axe and 55% chance with the Warhammer. And the Chain of Returning actually gives him a 30-foot range to whichever weapon it's attached to. Now to go over Grog's abilities. His first one is a Goliath feature, Stone's Endurance. He can subtract 1d12 plus his con mod whenever he takes damage. He has to wait for a short rest or a long rest to be able to reuse it after using it once. He took the Mobile feat, which increases his speed by 10 whenever he dashes through difficult terrain. It doesn't cost him extra movement. And when you make a melee attack against a creature, you don't provoke opportunity attacks from that creature for the rest of your turn, whether you hit or not. He can Rage, which gives him an advantage on strength checks and strength saving throws. When you make a melee weapon attack using your strength, you gain a bonus to your damage roll, which is your Rage bonus, and it tells you on the Barbarian table. And you have resistance from bludgeoning, piercing, and slashing damage of magical and non-magical alike. Reckless attack, you get advantage on your attacks when you choose to reckless attack, but your opponents do as well on you. Frenzy. Starting when you choose this path at 3rd level, you can go into a Frenzy. You Rage. If you do so for the duration of your Rage, you can make a single melee weapon attack as a bonus action. When your Rage ends, you suffer a level of Exhaustion. Extra attack, he gets to hit again at level 5. Fast movement plus 10 more speed while he isn't wearing heavy armor. Mindless Rage, beginning at 6th level, you can't be charmed or frightened while raging. Feral Instinct, your instincts are honed, you have advantage on initiative. Additionally, you can't be surprised. Brutal Critical, you get to add an additional weapon damage die to your weapon damage when you crit. This increases at higher levels. And finally, at level 10, Grog gets Intimidating Presence, which allows him to use his action to frighten someone he can see within 30 feet of them. They have to make a Wisdom saving throw or be frightened until the end of your next turn. On subsequent turns, you can use your action to extend the duration of the effect. Once they succeed, they can no longer be hit by this for 24 hours, and if they get 30 feet away from you or are out of your line of sight, you can't continue this effect. With that, we're moving on to Fjord and his abilities. At level 10, Fjord has 101 hit points, a 17 AC, and 30 movement speed. He has a 11 to hit with Star Razor and +9 to hit with Eldritch Blast. With Star Razor, he has a 60% chance of hitting Grog and a 65% chance of hitting Chetney. With Eldritch Blast, it's 50% chance to hit Grog and 55% chance to hit Chetney. Eldritch Blast is 120 feet, which gives him the most range of all of them for this fight. Moving on to Fjord's abilities, Relentless Endurance, which allows him to, instead of dropping to 0 hit points when he would drop to 0, he instead chooses to drop to 1. Savage attacks get extra damage die on crits. Otherworldly Patron, he picks Hexblade. And he gets the Warlock spells that accompany it, which should be on the screen. He has Hexblade's Curse. Starting at first level, you gain the ability to curse someone that you can see as a bonus action within 30 feet of you for up to 1 minute. It ends early if they die, or you are incapacitated. He gains the following benefits. Bonus damage on attack rolls or on damage rolls against the target for your proficiency bonus. You get to crit on 19s and 20s, and if the target dies early, you get to heal a bit your Warlock level plus your Charisma modifier. He gets the Hex Warrior ability, which allows him to gain proficiencies in different types of armor, shields, and other weapons. And he gets to add his Charisma modifier to his weapon attacks and damage instead of having to rely on dexterity or strength. He gets Eldritch Evocations. He has Agonizing Blast, which lets you add your Charisma modifier to the damage of a Eldritch Blast. Thirsting Blade, which allows him to use his pack weapon and attack twice with it instead of just once. Relentless Hex. Use your curse to temporarily bond between you and a target. As a bonus action, you can magically teleport up to 30 feet with them. You get to use this on Hex or Hexblade's Curse, doesn't matter which. At level 6, Fjord gets a Cursed Spectre, which means when he kills someone, he can bring them back as a spirit or specter on his side. They gain temporary hit points equal to half his Warlock level, and they roll their own initiative. They obey their verbal commands, and they get special bonus to its attack equal to your Charisma modifier. The Spectre remains in your service until the end of your next long rest, at which point it vanishes to the afterlife. Once you bind a Spectre with this feature, you can't use the feature again until you finish a long rest. At level 10, Fjord gets the Armor of Hex's ability. Your Hex grows more powerful. If the target cursed by your Hexblade's Curse hits you with an attack roll a d6. On a 4 or higher, the attack instead misses you. And finally, moving on to Chetney. His HP is 86, which has him being the lowest of all the hit point totals. Kind of. We'll get to that in a minute. AC is 18, and speed is 35, which officially makes Fjord the slowest, without any enhancements. Chance of hitting. Chetney has a +8 with his Chisel, Turmoil, and his Claws. All of his weapons are exactly the same for hitting. Chetney has a 45% chance to hit Grog, and a 55% chance to hit Fjord with all of his weapons. Abilities. Hunter's Bane. You have Wisdom on saving throws, survival checks to track Fae, fiends, or undead. The Hunter's Bane also empowers you to control your Hemocraft magic using your blood, your life essence to fuel it. At level 1, Chetney also gets Blood Maledict, which allows him to use Blood Curses. His Blood Curses are Blood Curse of Bloated Agony. Use a bonus action to curse a creature you can see within 30 feet, causing its body to swell. For the duration, the creature has disadvantage on strength checks and dexterity checks and takes 1 necrotic damage or 1d8 necrotic damage if it makes more than 1 attack a turn, which is huge for this fight. He also has Blood Curse of the Marked. As a bonus action, you can mark a creature you can see within 30 feet of you until the end of your turn. Whenever you hit the cursed creature with a weapon for which you have Crimson Right, you can roll an additional Hemocraft die when determining the extra damage from the Crimson Right. At second level, Chetney gets a fighting style. He chose Dueling. When you are wielding a weapon in one hand and no weapons in the other, you gain +2 to damage rolls with that weapon. Crimson Right, this was what he allows him to spark up his claws or his weapons with blood. As a bonus action, he can activate this. The Crimson Rights he chose were Rite of Flame, which allows him to add 1d6 of fire damage, and he chose Rite of Frozen, which is the exact same thing, but frozen instead of fire, so ice damage instead of fire. And then he chose his Blood Hunter Order, the Order of the Lycan. Heightened Senses. When you choose this archetype at 3rd level, you gain the improved senses of a natural predator. You have advantage on wisdom perception checks that rely on hearing or smell. Hybrid Transformation. Also at 3rd level, you learn to control the Lycopanthic Curse that courses through your veins. As a bonus action, you can transform into a special hybrid form for up to 1 hour. You can speak, use equipment, wear armor while in this form, and you can revert back to normal as a bonus action. You automatically revert back to normal if you fall unconscious or die. You gain the following benefits from this. You have advantage on strength checks and strength saving throws. You have +1 melee bonus with rolls, or melee damage bonus. This bonus becomes +2 at level 11, but that doesn't matter here. Resilient Hide, you have resistance to bludgeoning, piercing, and slashing. This is what I mentioned earlier with his HP. Technically, because of this, he doesn't have the lowest pool with some weapons. but it has to be from non-magical attacks and not made from silvered weapons. Additionally, while you are not wearing heavy armor, you have +1 to your AC. Predatory strikes, you can use your Crimson Right feature on your unarmed strikes, which is his claws. We've been over this. He gets Bloodlust if you start your turn with fewer hit points than half your hit point maximum. You must succeed a DC 8 Wisdom save or move directly toward the nearest creature, which doesn't matter for this fight. Shadow Touch is a feat he picked up. Increase your intelligence and wisdom by 1 to a maximum of 20, and you get to pick up 2 spells. He picked up Invisibility, and I think he also picked up Inflict Wounds. He gets an extra attack, and he gets Brand of Castration. At level 6, when you damage a creature with a weapon with your Crimson Right, you can channel Hemocraft Magic to sear a arcane brand into the creature. No action is required. You also know the direction of the branded creature as long as it's on the same plane as you. Further, each time the branded creature deals damage to you or a creature you can see within 5 feet of you, the branded creature takes psychic damage equal to your Hemocraft modifier, minimum of 1. The brand lasts until you dismiss it, or until you use the feature to apply the brand to another. Striker's Prowess, starting at level 7, your speed increases by 10, which is why he's not at 25, and he gets increased jump distance and height. Your hybrid form also gains the following additional benefit. Improved Predatory Strike, you have +1 bonus to your attack rolls with your unarmed strike. This bonus becomes +2 yet again at level 11, but that's not important yet. Additionally, when you have a active Crimson Right on your unarmed strike, while you're in your hybrid form, your unarmed strikes are considered magical for the purpose of overcoming resistance and immunities to non-magical attacks. At level 9, he gains Grim Psychometry, but that does not matter for this fight. It is more about finding out the histories behind a place or an object. Dark Augmentation, this gives him 5 more movement speed and gives him a bonus to Strength, Dexterity, and Constitution saving throws equal to his Hemocraft modifier. So now that we've looked over their health, weapons, armor, abilities, it's time for us to go over their average damage per turn. The way I calculated this was I took their damage dice and half of the maximum and then added their modifiers afterwards, because the only thing that's really random about their damage is the dice itself. So I figured taking the average was the best way, and I just did that the same way you would take the average hit points per level. So I just feel like that's a very strong and easy way to do it. So if we look at Grog's average damage per turn, it's 13 slashing damage with the Great Axe and 13 bludgeoning damage and 3 fire damage with the Warhammer. This includes rage and everything else that's on top of it. Now with an extra attack, that damage becomes 26 with the Great Axe and 32 with the Warhammer. If he critted, he could add 6 more damage on top of the axe and 5 more damage on top of the hammer with his brutal criticals, but we're not going to do that because we're just taking averages here. So just average hits and rolls on hit dice. And the last thing is, he can make 3 attacks because of his frenzy ability, but we're just going to act as if he's not going to hit all of them because, I mean, that's rolling 6 dice with Reckless, so it'd be very unlikely that he's going to hit all of them. I mean, it's totally possible he could hit all 3, but I'm going to say for the sake of things, we're just going to have 2 hits hit per turn, so his damage is 26 and 32 depending on the weapon. When Fjord hits, his average damage is 12 with Star Razor and 10 with Eldritch Blast. If he had Hexblade's Curse, you could go up by 4 more damage for both of those. And if he hits twice per turn, because he can hit with 2 Eldritch Blasts and 2 Star Razors, the Star Razor damage is 24 per turn, and the Eldritch Blast is 20 per turn. Again, you can still add damage to that with the Hexblade's Curse, but we're going to act as if that is not a thing that's available to him right now, because he can only do it to one person, and it would be a little bit unfair for me to pick now who that would be on, so we're just unfortunately not going to be able to use it. It's not like Rage or Crimson Right where it's active on you, it's active on someone else. Fjord does get a higher crit rate, but again, we're not looking at crits. For Chetney, we will assume he's in a werewolf form, and he's using his Crimson Right. So when Chetney hits, his average damage is 12 slashing with his Chisel and Claws, because they're the same. When he hits with Turmoil, it's 15. But if he hits twice, you double all that, so 24 with the Claws or Chisel, and then 30 with Turmoil per turn if he hits twice. And now the result of this fight. The winner is basically who lasts the longest. So Fjord goes down in 5 turns from Chetney with his Chisel, or in 4 turns with Turmoil. Fjord goes down in 4 turns from the silver or from the Great Axe from Grog, and 3.5 turns from the Warhammer from Grog. It just means on the 4th turn he can turn his attention to Chetney. Chetney goes down by Fjord in either 4 or 4.5 turns, depending on the weapon. 4 is Star Razor, 4.5 is Eldritch Blast. Chetney doesn't resist any of Fjord's damage. However, Chetney does resist the Great Axe because it is not silvered, so he goes down in 7 turns by the Great Axe from Grog, but he goes down in 3 from the Warhammer from Grog. Grog goes down in 12 turns from Star Razor from Grog, or 7 from Eldritch Blast, as he doesn't resist Eldritch Blast damage. Grog then goes down in 10 turns from the Chisels of their Claws, or in 8 turns from Turmoil. Grog resists most of Chetney's damage and most of Star Razor's damage. The winner based on this, and the last person standing, depending on how long everything takes, is Grog. He takes way longer to kill than anyone else because of his resistances and his larger health pool, and he honestly might be the hardest one to hit because he has the highest AC, but the other two do have good modifiers to hit, so it's very likely that they'll make the hits. But he does have the highest health pool, and with his resistances, it's basically doubling that health pool, so it's pretty nasty. Grog, in this fashion, wins the fight. But I'm sure that's not very satisfying, because I'm sure some of you already know that this ignores a ton of D&D's combat rules. This implies that they're just standing there and effectively letting each other get hit by each other, and that's not a very good representation of what D&D combat is. It ignores range, magic, healing, moving around, disengaging from a combat scenario, and it just ignores a ton of things. It ignores hitting someone with a damage or with an attack roll. If you don't roll enough, you're not going to hit. I'm assuming they get to hit twice a turn, but they might not be able to. I'm assuming that they're rolling the average every time, but they're probably going to roll a lot better than the average. So, the only way that we're going to be able to do this properly is if this fight happens, and that's what's going to happen. I have called upon 2 of my players from my D&D game, and we're going to do the Battle Royale ourselves in person. We like in-person gaming. It's not going to be online. And I'm going to take pictures of it, and I'm going to put them on this video. So, that's going to be very exciting. There is 2 things I want to point out before we get started in that, though, or before we move on to that, and that is Fjord. Fjord has a spell that is known as Summon Greater Demon, and with it, he theoretically could summon, say, a Vrock, and get on top of that Vrock, and then fly the fuck away and sit 120 feet away from the other 2, and kill them in no time, because he won't be taking any damage, and that's just not fun. That's not fun, that's not cool, and realistically, it's lame, and we want to have a fun, fair fight. So we've already put a restriction on that, where he can't get on top of a summon's back and fly away. That's the only restriction for that. The other restriction that we've put on the fight so far is if you, say, line up against each other, so there's 3 people in a row, 1 person's in the middle, 2 on the outside, those 2 people don't get advantage or flanking. They're the enemy of the enemy, but in this case, they're not friends. They're also enemies because they're going to kill each other as soon as they get rid of the person in the middle. And that sort of is going to nullify the whole tag team thing that might happen. Tag teaming might still happen where the 2 of them just decide to whack 1 person, but they won't get advantage on the rolls. So those are the only 2 restrictions that are happening for the combat. With that being said, roll initiative. Welcome to the present timeline where the fight has already taken place. I do want to go over a few rules. I know last time I said we're going to roll initiative, but I do want to go over these rules beforehand because a few things popped up before combat started that we wanted to sort of clarify. First of all, no flying. Like I said before, Fjord can't summon a demon that can help him fly and just shoot down upon the other 2. That would just make it way too easy for him to win, and it's just kind of boring doing it that way. No flanking rules. Like I said before, you can't have 2 people line up on 1 and just get advantage. Everyone's an enemy here, so that realistically doesn't work. And we're going to start 30 feet away from each other. We realize that this would be very beneficial for those who have a bit more range if they happen to go first. Like if Chetney went first, he can put a blood curse on somebody. And if Fjord went first, he can blast some Eldritch Blast from a distance. And this way, the lowest movement was Fjord with 30 feet. So if the other person, Grog, went first, he could just run up and smash somebody. So it was a good distance to start off with, and we thought that was fair. The last thing of note is Grog's AC. So on Critical Role stats, for whatever reason, it says it's 19, but we looked over that sheet for like an hour because the player who was playing Grog couldn't find what made the AC 19. There's no armor, there's nothing that would boost the AC, and the dexterity and the con mod equaled 17, not 19. So for the fight, we ran with it being 17, and for the theoretical fight, it doesn't really change anything because we assumed they were going to hit anyway when it was 19. It just means that their percentages were above 60 each for hitting Grog. So those are the only changes. Now it's time to roll initiative. Initiative rolls went like this. Grog, Fjord, Chetney. I don't think the numbers are overly important. That's just the order. First round, Grog rages and runs up to Fjord with the Firebrand Warhammer and misses the first attack but hits the second for 22 damage. Fjord then casts Summon Greater Demon and summons a Echo of a Demogorgon. It has a CR of 6, so it counts in this, even though it's extremely new. It just came out in the new giant book presented by Bigby, I think, and it's pretty good. It unfortunately gets a low roll on its initiative. Fjord then puts Hexblade Curse on Grog as a bonus action. Chetney then runs up with Turmoil and puts his Crimson Right on it and attacks Fjord for 23 damage and 18 damage. This is when I realized I shouldn't have told them that Fjord is a caster. The demon then hits Grog twice for 28 damage. The demon uses his bonus action Scream to try to hurt Grog a bit more, but he saves the 13 wisdom save. Round 2, Grog reckless attacks on Fjord and hits for 20 damage, misses the second attack, but then hits the bonus action Frenzy attack for 17 damage. Fjord kept his concentration throughout all of this. He then has 1 hit point left after all the damage he's taken. He got extremely lucky. Fjord is up. He hits Grog for 7 on his first attack, and then on the second attack is a crit, so he did 12 damage. He then cast Far Step as a bonus action to teleport 60 feet away. He then runs his full movement the fuck away from them. Chetney then transforms into a werewolf, and then moves up to Grog. He hits for 12 damage, and then puts Brand of Castigation on Grog, just in case Grog did any attacks on enemies nearby. And then he attacks again for 11 damage. The demon then hits Grog once for 11 damage, but then Grog fails the Scream save, and he takes 14 damage. Grog now has 39 hit points left. Grog takes out the Lightning Javelin, which I didn't mention earlier, and then throws it towards Fjord using the command word, so there's no throw, it's just like a spell attack, or a save. Everything in its line must make a dexterity save. The demon and Fjord both get hit by it because they're both in the line. Fjord uses his Stone's Endurance to keep himself standing at 1 hit point. The demon takes 7 damage. Grog then tries to hit Chetney with a punch, but misses. Fjord then hits Grog with 1 Eldritch Blast for 14 damage. Chetney then runs toward Fjord, taking opportunities attack from both Grog and the demon. 3 damage from Grog's punch, and 13 damage from the demon. Chetney can't reach Fjord, he doesn't have half the movement speed he needs. The demon then chases after Chetney. He hits Chetney, dealing 16 damage with his regular attacks, and then Chetney fails the Scream for 13 more damage. Grog then runs toward Fjord for his full movement and then dashes. He's still 40 feet away. Fjord then uses his Eldritch Blast, hitting twice more, and that is enough to kill Grog. He had 25 hit points left, and Fjord did around 28 damage. Fjord heals back 14 HP thanks to Hexblade's Curse, so now has 15 health, which is much better than what he had before. Fjord then makes Grog become a Spectre, which initiative roll is 20. Fjord then runs his full movement away from Chetney. Chetney then runs after Fjord, takes another opportunity attack from the demon of 17 damage. Chetney then puts a Blood Curse of the Marked on Fjord for an extra d6 in case he hits, in an attempt to really kill Fjord, just to get it out of the way. Chetney then throws Turmoil, but unfortunately misses. The demon then runs up behind Chetney, hits twice for 28 damage, and then kills Chetney. Fjord has won the fight. It was very, very, very close. And there you have it. We did both the theoretical fight and the practical fight. And based on the theoretical, Grog wins. Based on the practical, Fjord wins. and it was super fun to do. It took a long time to break things down and to make sure that everything was where it was supposed to be, and somehow I still missed the AC, but it didn't matter. We were focusing on making sure that everyone got to attack twice. But overall, it was super fun to do. There are a few changes I will make for the practical in the future, and for the theoretical, I'm just going to make sure I go over everything 4 or 5 times to make sure I get them all right and make sure, hey, this guy's health is wrong, this guy's HP is wrong, or whatever. So I will eventually get better at it. There's a learning curve to this, and it's super fun. For the changes to the practical, however, depending on a few things and how they go, I'm going to have them roll for their characters next time. That way they don't know what everyone else is, because I told them all the classes and asked what they would rather play. And because of that, they all got to know who the magic user was. And because of that, Fjord got super targeted super early. And I do think that would change the fight if they didn't know. So I think it'd be better next time if they roll and we grab a third player to be the other person. And I'm going to sit behind a DM screen or just off to the side and sort of watch it all play out. And in case a rule comes up, I'll be able to be the one who looks it up fast enough and be able to deal with it. And that way I'll be able to take better notes. I feel like my note taking could have been better and more accurate. But overall, really fun. And I really enjoyed this. And I can't wait to do the next one. I don't know who I'm going to do next. I've been asked to hold off on Tals until later, just because if the third person can't be a player and I have to still step in, they want to do a Tals one. So they want to be a part of that. So we'll probably do someone else before that. But overall, super fun. Really enjoyed this. And technically, this was the reveal of my D&D table, and behind all of us is my D&D minis and stuff. So if you guys want to see that in more detail and like look at all that stuff, I happen to have collected quite a bit. There's a ton of shit, and there's a bunch of like homemade terrain stuff that we have, so I would love to show that stuff off. So yeah, if you guys want to see that, let me know, and I will show you guys that stuff in a different video. But until then, peace. See you guys on Tuesday with whatever video I make next.